It's the new year, and I think it's time I show some appreciation to one of my favorite Nintendo series. Metroid is one of the best action-adventure games out there, featuring many unique power-ups and enemy alien creatures to test that unique gear on. Not to mention the cool background story, the hidden locations to find, and even more upgrades for your upgrades. Games like these need some really cool bosses to back up all the awesome equipment you obtain, right? Well, let me share some of my favorites. I just want to drop some criteria before we move on. This list is going to be about story, strategy, and gameplay involved in the boss fights, as well as any other refights that the boss is featured in. Every time a boss is fought will be discussed too. So without further ado, welcome my friends to my top 10 Metroid bosses. Move over Bowser, make way for Crocomire. Crocomire is a strange alien creature which, true to its name, resembles a crocodile located within the Norfair region of Zebus. He doesn't look like much of a threat, and to be honest, he isn't that much of a threat either, as his only attacks feature him moving forward towards Samus and spitting out some sticky slime balls from his mouth, which if shot leave behind ammo and health backups to give Samus some supplies during the battle. You may notice when you shoot him in his mouth, he doesn't take any damage but is pushed back by the shots. This is the key to victory, as the path behind him lies a pool of superheated lava from Lower Norfair. The objective is to obviously have a tug-of-war match with the beast, pushing him back faster than he can push Samus back, as behind her is a wall of spikes. After a short or long battle, depending on how you do, Crocomire is forced into the pit, and instead of just sinking into the bottom and dying, he has to pull his struggle and pop out of the lava, showing his skin and eyeballs progressively melting off until he's nothing but a skeleton. Freaky. That's not all though, as you lack the grapple beam to get across the lava, and you can't reach the entrance door anymore as it's stuck on the ceiling. When you're down on the ground, you may notice some bubbles appearing in the lava under the platform, moving towards the left side of the room. Once the bubbles go off screen, the boss music starts playing again and the room starts rumbling and shaking. The spikes break away, revealing a very much alive skeleton of Crocomire, which jumps towards Samus, then promptly breaks apart, leaving only a skull, concluding the battle. Well, that's not all for Crocomire, as there's a few odd tidbits and cut content to discuss. In the game files for Super Metroid, there's a creature labeled as a Stoke, which looks like a miniature version of Crocomire, possibly intended to be a juvenile version of the creature. The name Crocomire is strange for a creature found in Norfair 2, especially considering lava is what you use to destroy him in the first place. If you look closely at the skin on his head and back, it looks like he's been severely burned before, which we might have witnessed in Zero Mission, as Crocomire was cut from that game, though his sprite still exists in the files, in which he looks even more threatening, and having a more smoother and undamaged looking skin, which may have meant that he would receive his injuries in this game. Also, after you leave Crocomire's room and come back, his skull changes place from being behind a bush to out in the open. Maybe Crocomire is still alive and just likes playing dead. Either way, it's still a pretty cool fight, and leaves one hell of an impression. The first is the worst, and this guy is no different, and by worst, I mean best in terms of strategy. Kraid is the one who brought that forward. This big chungus is one of the Space Pirate commanders, and he's no missile spam fest. Well, in the later games, that is, as in the original Metroid for the NES, he's a little chungus, and a missile spam boss. However, comes Super Metroid, and he finally becomes the true Chungus, taking up 3 screens worth of space for his newfound height too. They even added a creature called Mini Kraid to build up to the big reveal of the new and improved Kraid. Kraid's strategy involves shooting him in the eye with a missile or charge shot, then firing missiles of any variety or a charge shot for better damage down his throat. The kicker is he starts off on a low platform, but as he takes damage, he reveals his true height as the battle continues, making Samus have to give chase after his head, all the while dodging his spinning claws, rocks, and spikes lining the ceiling and floors, while he also attacks using these weird spike creatures he spawns from his stomach as extra platforms to reach his head, all the while he moves back and forth surprisingly quickly for a big guy. After hitting him enough times, he sinks back into the ground defeated. In Zero Mission, he makes a reappearance, with of course a brand new sprite, a brand new roar, and a brand new strategy. Being slightly easier than his appearance in Super, it makes up for it with spectacle. This time around, he starts the battle as tall as he is, featuring new animations for his hands and head, as he releases his spinning nail attack and roars. Second verse, same as the first, as you have to shoot him in his face and then down his throat. After taking sufficient damage, he sinks into the ground one more time and explodes. Kraid was also slated to make an appearance in Metroid Prime under the name Metacraid, but he was cut, with only a concept model existing showing him as the boss of the Phazon mines, which would give him his first appearance in 3D. This is kind of disappointing though. At least we got the Omega Pirate and the other Phazon enhanced pirates out of it for Prime. With Metroid Prime 4 still in the works, it is possible Kraid might finally break out into the third dimension. Let's see what the future holds, shall we? And speaking of Phazon pirates, when the Phazon experiments are done, horrible mutant monsters are spawned. The Omega Pirate was the greatest of the first generations of space pirate super soldiers enhanced by the mutagenic compound Phazon. This guy may look intimidating, but he can be a pushover when you know how to defeat him properly. He absorbs beam blasts while he stomps around occasionally creating shockwaves with a ground slam, so no blasting him with beams. However, his Phazon plated armor makes excellent target practice for missiles, which effectively make him a missile spam boss, as you have to break away his armor plates, Space Godzilla style, to actually damage the guy. Once all the pieces are gone, he turns invisible and tries to regenerate his armor by absorbing Phazon from pools, while possibly shouting, "Finish her!" to summon beam troopers to aid him. He turns himself invisible with the help of his chameleon manta, and tries to keep himself cloaked even with the X-ray visor equipped. However, his insides become visible and vulnerable when he absorbs Phazon for regeneration. Keep on the offensive and he'll go down quickly. Super missiles help in this regard extremely well, as only 4 needed to drain him of health completely. However, a few years of research later, and during the events of Metroid Prime 3, the Space Pirates were able to perfect their Super Soldier experiments, creating the Berserker Lords. The Berserker Lords are a little more streamlined than the Omega Pirates, featuring phasite armor that is indestructible to conventional means, and more integrated weapon systems that don't rely on heavy plasma cannons plugged into their backs. They also feature an indestructible Phazon tank plugged onto their backsides, possibly pumping them full of the mutagenic compound. Surprisingly, Berserker Lords don't rely on their brute strength to try to kill Samus, preferring to vomit out a spray of liquid Phazon and a red beam which they also regurgitate on occasion. They empower some form of energy spheres in their shoulder, which when blasted stagger them and activate their secondary projectile weapon. 2 Phazon energy spheres, which when shot, fly back towards the emitters on their backs, damaging the armor. Once this is done 4 times, the backplate is broken and you can go to town on its weak point, draining its health. There's also a second encounter with the Berserker on Elysia, the game's second planet, which is quite similar to the first, except he fires more red energy spheres with the purple reflective ones, making the fight longer. However, with Hyper Mode unlocked at this point, this guy is no contest. Phazon is one hell of a drug, don't you think? This guy was a surprise, and he's quite the anomaly. Let me introduce the Arachnus! The Arachnus is one of the few larger predatory life forms on the hostile planet SR-388, and one of the few non-Metroid bosses in Metroid 2: Return of Samus. In the original, the Arachnus pretends to be an item sphere in the hands of a Chozo statue. After being shot, it rolls off and begins to bounce around the room in an attempt to smash Samus. The only way to get this overgrown armadillo to open its shell is to lay a morph ball bomb in its path, then shooting it to give damage. After a bit of hits, it explodes, revealing the Spring Ball ability, which it was using to hop around during the battle. Funnily enough, the Spring Ball in the encounter is purely optional. However, in Metroid Fusion, there's an encounter that isn't. Featuring as the first boss of the game, an X-Parasite mimicking an Arachnus is fought. The Arachnus shows signs of genetic tampering by the X-Parasites, as this one is now bigger than the size of a fully grown human being. Features a slightly flammable chemical spit, and the ability to create shockwaves with its claws. The Arachnus mimic can be stunned by missiles, and doesn't hide in its shell as much. More than likely because Samus doesn't have the morph ball bombs to stun it at the time. After enough damage is done to its body, the Arachnus roars one final time as its body distorts, revealing the Core X for what it really is. Blow it up with missiles and the morph ball abilities return to Samus. When the remake of Metroid 2 Samus Returns was released, good old Arachnus got an overhaul. His room got revamped to actually look like it's part of a Chozo temple, and he's now a required boss to defeat for progression. This time around, he fights similarly to his X-mimicked appearance in Fusion, with a few exceptions. The flammable chemical he spits is less effective, only burning the floor in small patches rather than a whole section of the floor, and he jumps around because once more he carries the Spring Ball upgrade. When disturbed this time around, he doesn't just destroy the Chozo statue that carried him, but the whole pedestal as well, creating the arena. He stands as tall as Samus this time, most likely because it's not affected by an X, but it's still a quick opponent, zipping around the room with decent speed, bouncing with the help of the Spring Ball. This time around, though, the Arachnus will leave its shell on its own, once more bringing his health to 0, causing him to fall over and disintegrate, leaving Samus to absorb its Aeon energy and retrieve the Spring Ball once again. The Arachnus is an example of an interesting hidden encounter turned into a really cool main attraction for the games he's based in. Gotta love those breakout characters. Or in this case, breakout boss, am I right? Just another bug hunt. The Brug Mass was a strange creature that Samus and the 07th Platoon encountered in the control room of the bottle ship. It was a giant mass of purple insects forming a humanoid body with a singular eye near the top of it. The Brug Mass was strangely elastic, being able to stretch its arms out for quick swipes and powerful slams on the ground. During the battle, Samus is backed up by members of the 07 Platoon who will open fire on it with their assault rifles to no effect, only being able to kill small amounts of Brugs that make up the behemoth. If shot at, the power beam will be absorbed, so dodging its swipes is the best way to go. After a short minute of dodging, Adam authorizes the use of freeze guns for his squad and missiles for Samus. The strategy afterwards is the same. Dodge the Oogie Boogie wannabe's tentacle stripes and fire a missile straight at the eye, after which it will attempt a really powerful tentacle slam. The platoon will immediately concentrate fire on the arm, freezing it, and leaving it susceptible to a follow-up missile strike on the frozen arm. Rinse repeat on the eye and second arm before the second phase begins. Here it will slam its body on the ground, or jump and then slam. When it performs a body slam, the soldiers will freeze the base of the Brug mask, after which a missile will dislodge the upper body from the base, sending its center eye out of the mass. The eye is revealed to be a large Brug with an eye-shaped pattern on its abdomen. You can take it out in several ways, but I like to run up to it with a charge beam and perform an overblast, which will kill it instantly. I love this thing. The design is really cool for a Metroid boss, consisting of a creature made up of multiple smaller ones. It's the most original idea, and the way you fight it can be really interesting too, as you can also perform several overblasts on the creature instead of missile shots, showing off the game's awesome animations. Plus the build up to this thing is really cool, as the small Brugs can be seen in every area leading up to the encounter, and after finishing the fight, a few Brugs can be seen running into vents before never showing up again. Also, one of the 07 Platoon members, Lyle Smithsonian, is afraid of insects, and was essentially what instigated the fight by overkilling a Brug with his rifle. In all honesty, if the Brugs were smaller and one crawled on me, yeah, I think I might have done the same thing. Which makes sense considering this thing is essentially a huge swarm of insects. Entomophobia beware! The Brug Mass is here to scare! When a Leviathan implants a planet with Phazon, it requires a creature to be its guardian. The Metroid Prime heeded the call of the Phazon and absorbed everything, even the Leviathan seed it was protecting, growing ever so powerful, locked behind the seal of the impact crater. It was detected by the space pirates, but they couldn't reach this Phazon-enhanced abomination, as the seal reached far around the site of the impact. Samus first encountered the creature in the depths of the impact crater, resting in a chamber of Phazon when the battle began. The fight against Metroid Prime is a simple one, as its body markings change colors to show what weapon it's weak to at the time. When its faceplate is closed, it will attempt to ram Samus, which can be dodged by using the Morph Ball and entering the ruts its legs create in the ground. After Samus chases it through the tunnels of the impact crater, it breaks through one last wall into a large chamber, where it discards its shell and attacks its core essence. The creature will continuously spawn Metroids to attack, while creating energy rings on the ground, which can be avoided with jumps. Once it is overloaded with Phazon, it transforms into a strange form with pseudopods and steals Samus's Phazon suit, after which it explodes into liquid Phazon. Later, it is seen that a hand with an eyeball in its palm extends from the pool. This is the birth of Dark Samus. Dark Samus, for all intents and purposes, was a clone of Samus that was part Metroid and Phazon. The entity is first encountered on Aether during the events of Metroid Prime 2. Her two encounters with Samus for the final one are quite similar, as she floats around the arena and fires rapid Phazon blasts, or missiles. After she reaches half her health bar, she charges up energy to fly into the air to fire more missiles, or to ram Samus from above. She explodes, but isn't gone for long, as she is later encountered after absorbing more Phazon and space pirate tech, enabling her to charge her beam and turn invisible. But the visibility can be encountered with the Dark Visor. She's also susceptible to the Dark Beam, so stock up on ammo and make the fight go more in your favor. After this, she's not encountered again until after the defeat of the Emperor Ing, where she is now even more mutated, with her skin now being invisible. The fight is the same as the second, with the exception of the walls being lined with Phazon that will damage Samus if she touches them. And now she features a new attack, which she shoop-da-whoops a large beam of Phazon. And when she turns invisible now, the Echo Visor is needed. When she is near death, she enters an impenetrable shield of Phazon, which can only be damaged by a Phazon beam, which can only be acquired by absorbing her weaker Phazon blasts and firing them back at her when sufficiently charged. She didn't stay dead for long, as she was revived on board a space pirate transport ship in a vat of Phazon, where she managed to take control of a large swath of the pirate forces through the use of the mutagen. Using her newfound ally, she captured an Aurora unit and implanted it into Phase, the planet that was the origin of Phazon, and used it to try to seed other worlds with Phazon to varying degrees of success. Samus arrived on Phase by the end of Metroid Prime 3, to finish the job and heal herself from Phazon corruption. During the final battle, Dark Samus uses her Rapid Beam from 2, and now has homing beam shots. She can make clones of herself called Dark Echoes, and spawn pillars to try and block returned fire. She will eventually try to heal herself by absorbing more Phazon from the planet, which Samus will have to stop before she refills her whole health bar. Eventually, the Echoes will begin attacking with her, as she also performs Phazon-based Boost Ball strikes. After her health is depleted again, she recoils and summons the stolen Aurora Unit 313, which was implanted into Phase and corrupted by Phazon, after which it must be battled by destroying its Phazon tentacles while dodging Phazon beams and overloading its core with Phazon, which destroys both Dark Samus and Phase, bringing into the threat of Phazon. Okay, let me catch my breath. Dark Samus is a cool villain. While I don't think that she is the best example of a Samus clone, I do think that she is a real threat. Phazon corruption aside, of course, her flaws come in with some of her fights, specifically the one against Metroid Prime's core, which is kinda dull as you just have to overload it with Phazon. And the other ones in 2, as those are a lot of busy work to get through, which could also be argued for the 1 and 3, but I think it hits a good balance of busy work and strategy. Plus, I really like the idea of a Phazon-based creature evolving into a more autonomous one with a want and need to spread Phazon. Did anybody count how many times I said Phazon during this video?
Fuck you, Merrick!
Deep in the bottle ship's pyrosphere lies a hunter in waiting. The Vorash is an aquatic organism that swims in lava. It acts very whale-like in movement. It acts like a shark while hunting. Samus first encountered this thing twice during her first expedition into the pyrosphere, where it attempts to devour her whole through one of the pyrosphere's crossover tubes, damaging it in the process. It will show up not too long afterwards, where it will try to devour her several times throughout a volcanic chamber, where it has to be dodged. It doesn't show up again until Samus returns to the pyrosphere, where it awaits her in yet another volcanic room. When she uses her grapple beam, the Vorash attacks her by jumping into the air, trying to devour her once more before she lands on a volcanic island in the room to begin the battle. The Vorash plays a more calmer role at the start of the fight. It will hop out of the lava like a whale, sending fireballs at Samus which are easily dodged, but not before long it will begin to dolphin jump, revealing its glowing stomach, which can be shot with a charge beam to stun it. It will either continue its fireball volley, or it will attempt to charge at Samus from the lava in a few different ways. But if the Vorash opens its mouth, it reveals it has caught a grapple point in its throat. Using the search view, Samus will find her grapple beam and attempt to fish it out of the lava. Once she finishes her pro bass fishing, the creature will be stunned for a short while on the platform, leaving it open for a missile strike or charge shot. Rinse and repeat until eventually the grapple point will become dislodged. However, you can use the grapple beam to jump between islands, prompting the Vorash to attack Samus while she crosses over. Swallowing the grapple point, get it down to low health, and fish it out one more time. Samus will spin it around Mario 64 style and so long, Bowser, it into a wall, snapping its spine. While it doesn't have a long time series appearance, the Vorash does make up for it in spectacle and strategy, with a glorious finishing move to add it onto its memorability. I really love how you have to fish this thing out of the lava for a chance to hit its weak spot. It's a more creative use for the grapple beam than a lot of other grapple beam kills. Plus, the design of the Vorash is really cool and had me enamored when I first saw pre-release screenshots of it. The way this thing hunts, Jaws ain't got nothing on the Vorash. I told you guys I would get to this. The mysterious being that haunts the hollowed halls of the wrecked ship is more than meets the eye. Phantoon, rather than what his name implies, is more than just a mere ghost. He's a being of higher purpose, almost an eldritch entity. Phantoon exists between dimensions, with his eye being the link between them. During the fight with him on Zebes, he phases between realities when his eye is open or shut, being intangible and invulnerable before he opens his eye randomly. He spawns ghostly entities called Phantom Eyes, which he uses with ferocity to attack. The space in which you fight him, his size, and the way Phantoon liberally uses his Phantom Eyes to attack gives a lack of breathing room, making him a very difficult boss fight in Super. You can't spam him to death as his eye is his vulnerability. It sits inside a pair of jaws, adding onto the Lovecraftian appearance. Damaging him enough, he will fade out of existence, returning power to the wrecked ship once more, letting you access the gravity suit from the ship's depths. Phantoon and his eyes weren't the only entities on board the abandoned vessel, as multiple ghostly skull-like creatures called caverns also inhabited the ship, and only appeared when Phantoon was draining its power. It can be presumed that the wrecked ship was an ancient Chozo ship, the one they used to either get to Zebes, or were forced to crash there due to Phantoon hitching a ride on board the vessel, with the caverns being the spirits of the deceased Chozo explorers being held in the physical plane by Phantoon's power. It was powerful enough that Mother Brain even noticed it, as he was a part of the gold statue that sealed off the entrance to the new Taurian base, and that it was also said to be feeding off of her brainwaves as well. Sadly, Phantoon didn't make a reappearance in the Zero mission, despite his home at the time making a small cameo. He does reappear in Other M in a very surprising manner. At the end of the game, Samus returns to the battleship to retrieve a special memento. When she arrives at the control room, something attacks the window from the outside. Tentacles slam down, knocking over scaffolding before a giant form rises into view. It's Phantoon! His eye jaws open and the battle begins with him summoning a new form of minion called Rage Hands. They will try to grab and punch Samus while Phantoon starts smashing through the windows and summons hundreds of Phantom Eyes to glide into her. Charge shots and missiles are most effective on his eye, which he keeps open most of the time now, and he takes a more relaxed role in the fight, preferring his minions to attack for him. Phantoon had gained a new trick though, as he will cover his eye with a vortex of dark matter to protect it, which he will have it periodically pop out on a tendril, and when his health is low enough, he will occasionally swipe at the arena with his massive tentacles. Once his health is low, his eye will become closer to the arena, where Samus will perform a lethal strike by charging a shot directly onto its pupil, after which he floats away from the arena and explodes in a flash of light. Phantoon's massive size this time around might be attributed to him absorbing the more abundant energy of the bottle ship, as it was many times larger than the wreck ship was, which is what possibly allowed him to summon more of his minions and or appendages into combat. Concept art of him shows that he was to have a shadowy body with Rage Hands as appendages, and confirms his origin as a multi-dimensional eldritch horror, explaining why he survived his encounter on Zebes. It is quite possible that his second defeat might not be his last as well. Only time will tell for sure. If he could survive one defeat, he might be able to come back again and again. Sadly, though, it seems that Brack, Zorak, and Moltar have a bigger threat on their hands now, too. The one who started it all, Ridley. Samus's true nemesis was the catalyst that started her bounty hunting career. He slaughtered and consumed her parents and destroyed her home. She keeps having to put him down again and again. They are practically two sides of a coin. Without him, Samus wouldn't be who she is today. Ridley, in most of his boss encounters, is a spam boss. He takes damage from missiles and charge shots to his body and can be taken down extremely quickly as a result. However, in his 3D appearances, his fights become more interesting and varied, if not more formulaic in some instances. In his first major appearance as Meta Ridley, his weakness becomes the weak armor on his chest, which is susceptible to plasma beam fire. During the fight, he will fly around and bombard the temple platforms with energy blasts that will destroy the artifact totems, and he will continue fighting this way until his health gets low, where he will land and attempt to both cover his chest and attack with his claws and energy breath. Shooting him in the mouth will make him stagger, exposing his chest once more for damage. The fight will continue like this until his health reaches 0. His end is satisfying as the artifact temple's perimeter defenses activate, and they all open fire on his chest at once, sending him falling into the impact crater. That must have been one bad heart attack, as Ridley is not encountered again until Prime 3, where he zeroes out Samus on Norian after burning a whole battalion of Marines with his plasma breath. He ambushes Samus at Generator C and drags her down a reactor shaft. The battle is timed, and if the counter reaches 0, game over. All the while, Ridley attacks with his plasma breath and his claws after grabbing Samus. His weakness this time being his glowing limbs and mouth, which he fires his energy blasts. Upon victory, Runda swoops in and snatches up Samus, not before she triumphantly fires 3 shots down his throat, letting him fall. Ridley is encountered once again as the guardian of the Eutrasian Leviathan Seed, where he and his abilities are supercharged by Phazon, and he is starting to grow back more of his organic limbs. The fight is similar to the ground phase of his fight from the original Prime. His mouth has to be shot to stagger him, Then his chest armor must be ripped open with the grapple beam, which will reveal his Phazon core, which must be promptly overloaded with Phazon. When his health gets low enough, he generates Phazite armor to protect his core, where he has to be stunned again before attacking the locks with the Nova Beam and X-Ray Visor. Ridley will also gain a new attack of charging up Phazon orbs, which can be shot to stagger him, as well as his mouth. After his armor is destroyed, he takes flight and will fire Phazon-charged Energy Blast. He will occasionally ground pound the arena, sending a Phazon shockwave, which must be dodged too. The whole while, Samus must overload Ridley's Phazon core. Once his health reaches 0, he explodes in a blast of Phazon, ending it once again for now. Ridley's fights in the Prime series were a major upgrade from his original 2D appearances. However, 2 of his major boss fights come to mind as some of his best. The first was the fight against his clone in Metroid Other M, where he has 2 major battles, one in his adolescent form, which is kinda reminiscent of the reactor shaft descent from Prime 3, and his fully rejuvenated appearance near the end of the game. And sweet, merciful Celestian Jesus Christ, this guy is menacing. His reappearance is so drastic it causes Samus to have another PTSD episode, something she got under control after their first re-encounter between the manga and Zero mission. The only thing that snapped her out of her episode was Ridley almost killing her friend Anthony Higgs, which begins the fight with Samus ready to kick some ass! The Ridley clone really shows off his amazing power. He attacks with his claws, flies and performs tail strikes in the air, breathes fire, and can even bombard the arena with a fireball that can create a shockwave. The clone can also grab Samus and scrape her along the walls if she isn't careful, and grow a protective shell of armor that can only be pierced by a super missile. This is also the first time we can see the true damage the plasma beam can do to his body, as his wings eventually disintegrate as the fight continues, drain his health, and one epic fight is over. After the clone comes my favorite of his more recent bouts, as at the end of Samus Returns, he makes a surprise reappearance, with a new form dubbed Proteus Ridley. He makes his grand entrance flying through a radiation storm and snatching the infant Metroid in his bare hand. Ridley has 3 phases in this fight, each more epic than the last. His attacks this time around feature many new abilities for his plasma breath, the first of which is a spread shot. He also has a tail strike and can body slam the ground. After his health is drained for the first time, an epic cutscene begins the second phase, and now Ridley sticks to the ground a lot more this time around, as he uses his plasma breath for a straight shot, and he tries to swipe at Samus with his claws. He will eventually take to the air, and once again use his spread shot plasma breath. Again, he gains another attack, where he will attempt to ram Samus in the air, and his tail strike gains a new earthquake effect. After his health is drained again, he pins Samus down in a cutscene, and the baby comes to her rescue. The third phase is when he switches around his fighting style constantly, from land to air, moving faster now and gaining 3 more attacks. On the ground, he gains a new claw swipe, which can be countered, and in the air, he gains a second faster ram attack, and can drop a plasma bomb from his mouth, spreading fire to the arena. Throughout the third phase, the baby Metroid will attack Ridley, draining his health and giving it to Samus. Eventually, he will fall, setting up the events for both Super Metroid and Fusion. Ridley is the king when it comes to the number of fights and the amount of strategy going into him. He may have the notoriety, and is one of my favorite Nintendo villains, but sadly, he isn't my number 1. But before we check out my number 1, let's take a look at the honorable mentions. The Fune and Namihe, how to properly turn a regular enemy into a cool boss fight. Steam Lord, even Gabe Newell doesn't want to mess with this steam. Zazabi X, simple fight, cool design, I like it. Gandreda, the proper way to do a boss rush. Good music too. Flagra. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space and I'm bad. Goyagma, amazing spectacle of a battle. Not a lot of lore though. All the Metroids in Samus Returns. All of these fights are great and varied, but you still gotta deal with 50 of them. The Queen Metroid. Every single fight with her is really cool, especially the powerbomb finishers and other M in Samus Returns. The SAX. Easy fight, but a better representation of Samus facing herself. And now that we've gotten through the honorable mentions, let's take a look at number 1.
Hey, relax. We're the good guys. Justice will prevail and all that stuff. Right, Samus?
Oh, this is kind of sad. Rundus is a bro. Made a great impression at the beginning of Metroid Prime 3, having a chill personality fitting for his abilities, even helping out Samus on a few occasions during the pirate invasion on Norian. In one case, actually saving her life. He's a Phrygian, giving him the natural ability to control ice, which he can use to great effect, joking about his skill on a few occasions as well. It just makes his corruption even more painful, as near the end of the invasion, Dark Samus arrives and blasts all the bounty hunters with a powerful supercharge of Phazon, incapacitating them. 2 weeks after the event, all of them except for Samus woke up, and found out that their bodies were self-replicating Phazon, and were given Phazon enhancement devices to make use of. They were sent on separate missions. Rundus was sent to Brio, where he quickly lost control of his mind due to the Phazon madness, where he was quickly assimilated into the corrupted space pirate ranks. Samus later encounters him in Brio Fire, where he is seen overlooking her in the fuel gel processing center before he runs off. Later at the boss arena, Samus gets ambushed by a space pirate brigade and a battleship raining fire overhead. After a bit of fighting, a large icicle pierces the arena from underground, sending out ice trails that kill off the remaining pirates. Rundus appears out of the icicle and stands there just staring at Samus before he throws an ice wave her way. Gone is the dry, relaxed hunter we've come to know, and in his place lies a savage killer. Despite his feral grunts and howls throughout the fight, Rundus fights in a very elegant manner. He creates a Phazon-based ice armor which has to be broken in order to damage him. He will run around the arena and fire ice-based projectiles at Samus, or fly around in a trail of ice he creates to dodge her attacks. Once he's staggered, she can use her grapple beam to rip off his armor, exposing him. He will eventually regenerate the armor, and he will hop onto one of the several ice platforms he created, after which he will regenerate a large homing ice projectile. If Rundus is staggered on one of the ice platforms, tearing away at his ice armor will rip him down to the ground. When his health is low enough, he will start creating smaller homing ice projectiles when he rides on his ice sheet. When his health is near critical, he will use his Phazon enhancement device to enter hyper mode, protecting him from regular damage and increasing his damage output. Samus will need to counter with her Phazon beams. If Rundus enters hyper mode on one of his pillars, he will use his enhanced abilities to create a Phazon-imbued ice bolus, which he can use to hit half of the arena and severely damaging Samus, if not outright killing her. The only way to stop the bolus is to stun Rundus, and once that happens, he can be open to more attacks. Once his health is depleted, something unexpected happens. Rundus looks around confused for a second before reaching out towards Samus, who's approaching him, after which an ice sheet forms underneath him, which shapes into several icicles, impaling him multiple times while lifting him into the air, and an apparition of Dark Samus absorbed his Phazon energy before leaving. Him being struck back to his senses appears as though he wasn't fully consumed by the madness, and that Dark Samus had to assume direct control to have him fully become her plaything. Rundus is an example of a character with very brief history having an impact. This and the overall somber feeling of his battle theme enhanced the experience of having to take down a former ally who has lost all of his senses. All jokes aside, when I first made it to him, I wanted to cry when he started attacking, even more so when he died. I'm sorry, Rundus. Even though we only knew you briefly, you had a great impact. That's why he's my number one. So, thank you guys for watching the video, and I know the end kind of got emotional, but I really wanted to put my heart into these. So I want to thank Zig. He's great. I'm glad he edits these. He's really good. You know, I'm always thankful for him. Check out his social media down in the description. It's all there. Really, you know, he's a fun dude. I also want to thank Mutter for making the thumbnail art. And all of her social media stuff is down in the description as well, including her Twitter and Redbubble. She takes commissions, so check her out. Show her some love. And once again, we also have my Twitch channel, where I stream every day from 9 to 12 at night. So check us out. We stream various games. At some point, I would love to stream some of the Metroid Prime games. So I did do some of the, I did do 2 parts of Fusion, and I guess if I'm not streaming it right now, upcoming Fusion stream, Zero Mission stream planned, which is going to be really fun. So yeah, check that out. We also have a Patreon down in the description if you want to donate to us. Please don't feel obligated to. We do this completely for fun, and like I said, it's all up, like I said, please don't. Whatever you do, just be cool, guys. Enjoy the content. I hope you guys enjoy. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you. And have a healthy and happy new year. Merrick out. See you guys.